undisputed heavyweight champion of global finance going toe-to-toe with a seriously ambitious rising contender. By the end of this, you're going to have a crystal clear understanding of the unseen forces that literally drive global trade. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Why trade in dollars? Here's the actual puzzle we're trying to solve today. Every single day, India is buying and selling an enormous amount of goods all over the world. But despite all that massive activity, the transactions, well, they're almost always conducted in US dollars. So why on earth would a country use a currency from literally 8,000 miles away just to buy its own everyday goods? It doesn't make intuitive sense, right?
Now, let's instantly clear up the absolute biggest misconception about this whole thing. There's this incredibly common myth out there that the Indian rupee is just weak, or that it lacks value. Actually, scratch that. It's completely false. The fact of the matter is simply that the US dollar is the most widely accepted currency in the world, so it's all about universal acceptance, not a lack of domestic worth.
The global payment mystery. So, if it isn't about the rupee being weak, how did we end up with this wild setup in the first place? We really need to look at the sheer scale of what we're talking about here to figure it out. Just think about the absolutely critical, high-value stuff moving across India's borders every single day. On the one hand, India buys millions of barrels of crude oil to keep the country running, along with tons of gold, electronics, and heavy machinery. And in return, India sells essential medicines, world-class software, and cars to the rest of the globe. It's a massive, massive volume of two-way trade. Yet, for almost every single transaction happening in this huge exchange, the US dollar swoops in to act as the mandatory middleman. Reign of the dollar. To figure out how the dollar got this incredibly lucrative gig as the world's ultimate middleman, we have to look back. How did the US achieve this absolute dominance? Because, spoiler alert, it definitely didn't happen overnight. Let's trace this timeline real quick. Right after World War II, the United States emerged as an absolute economic powerhouse. And over time, because the US economy was just so incredibly robust, other countries started adopting the dollar for their own trade. Why? Simply because it was stable and deeply, deeply trusted. And because of that decades-long history, we arrive at today, where most countries actually keep a massive chunk of their national savings right in US dollars. Basically, the dollar built an entire empire out of trust. The network effect. But how does that history actually function in practice today? Well, we're going to do a little real-world crime scene reconstruction to see how this dominance plays out when two completely different countries try to do business.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact mechanics of international trade. Let's say India wants to buy crude oil from Saudi Arabia. Naturally, India might prefer to just pay in rupees, but here's the catch. Saudi Arabia doesn't just trade with India. They buy goods globally and need a universally accepted currency to do it. They can't easily take those rupees and use them to buy goods from, say, a third country. So to make the deal happen, India has to convert its rupees into US dollars to finally pay Saudi Arabia. The US dollar eliminates the need to exchange many different currencies for every single international trade. That is the true superpower of the dollar's network effect. It reduces friction. Imagine the total chaos, and honestly the massive extra costs that would get passed down to consumers like you and me if businesses had to constantly exchange 50 different local currencies for every single international deal. The global economy would literally grind to a halt. But because almost every country on Earth understands the value of the dollar, global trade stays smooth and predictable.
The underdog strategy. However, just because the dollar is sitting comfortably on top doesn't mean our story ends here. We've got a twist. While the current system definitely works, India isn't really content to just sit on the sidelines anymore. They are actively pushing to internationalize the Indian rupee. So the crucial point is understanding why India is fighting this uphill battle. Think of this as our underdogs training montage. If India can convince the world to accept the rupee, well, first off, they instantly need fewer US dollars. But more importantly, they save a fortune on currency exchange charges that makes Indian businesses way more competitive globally. And inherently, by being actively traded, the Indian rupee becomes stronger and gains serious global importance. It's a real win-win for them.
The future of the rupee. Now, as we look ahead, we have to acknowledge reality. The benefits are amazing. And sure, some countries have already agreed to settle trades in rupees. But turning a local currency into a truly global one? Yeah, that's no walk in the park. Our underdog still has a massive mountain to climb.
Because there are unwritten rules to global finance. A currency becomes internationally accepted only when the country's economy is strong, its trade is large, and people around the world trust its financial system. Those are the three massive pillars. You can't just politely ask the world to use your money. You have to prove your economy is undeniable, and your financial system is deeply, undeniably trustworthy. So let's look at the tail of the tape here, between our reigning champion and our rising contender. On one side, the US dollar has this massive head start. It's deeply entrenched, having built global trust over many, many decades. But on the other side, the Indian rupee is backed by a rapidly growing economy. The Indian government is highly motivated, and they're slowly but surely increasing the rupee's global trade role.
Which brings us to the big question. Is the dollar's undisputed reign ending? Look, the US dollar is absolutely still the most trusted currency today, no doubt about it. But with India working tirelessly and their economy booming, the financial landscape is definitely starting to shift. If this underdog story actually succeeds, the way the entire world, and eventually you, pays for everything might permanently change. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this helped clear up the grand mystery of global trade.